If I had a question from Richard Bauer. Richard, I think I saw you earlier. Do you want to, if we cut to the red meat, as it were?
Sorry.
No, I caught you unawares.
You caught me unawares. So
You got it hidden away.
Got it hidden away. Yes, it was the
Obviously a
elephant
difficult
in the
one.
room. So sorry, what I said was, yeah. Vince, how are we expected to explain the proposed property tax to the many owners of the ordinary Victorian terraced houses in Hampstead town who, through no fault of their own, would be hit by the extortionate charge? All of the good work by the Lib Dem councillors to freeze the local council tax. For example, Band G, the average rate for the Hampstead Victorian terrace houses is about just over £2,000 per year. It's thrown away when compared to the minimum £20,000 annual property tax charge. Basically, what may have been intended as a gesture to the Labour voters in the northern constituencies will be devastating if implemented in London and the South East.
Well, that is a kind of extreme caricature of what it is we're saying. We have to set it in the context of our tax policy, which all our feedback tells us is extremely popular and is potentially one of our big selling points. The basis of the tax policy is that we want to cut taxes for millions of people who are not well off. And we propose to do that by raising the threshold to £10,000, which is a big step. And by doing that, you lift 3 to 4 million people out of tax altogether. And for people who are on standard rate tax, they pay less, £700 a year average. And we're talking about lifting out of tax millions of workers, mainly women, part-time working women, and pensioners, who pay less tax on their work and their savings. That's the objective. And the question then is how you pay for it. And we're quite open about the fact that although there should be other mechanisms, and we suggest some degree of green taxation, by taxing aviation, the bulk of the tax revenue to finance this tax cut has got to come from people who are relatively wealthy. If you have £1 million pension pot, you don't just get tax relief in proportion, and as the way if you run standard rate, you get a higher rate of tax relief. And we think that is fundamentally unfair and very, very expensive, and we want to get rid of it. We're also suggesting getting rid of the loophole that has opened up on capital gains tax, that before the 50p rate, you paid 40% on your income, but 18% on capital gains. It's a walking invitation to avoid paying income tax, which is what a lot of tax accountants do. And we're going back to the system that Nigel Lawson introduced under the Tory government, that you tax income and capital gains on the same basis. In addition to that, we think it's absolutely fair that there should be a modest tax on wealth. And the biggest source of wealth, as it happens, is property. And the specific proposal, is that for properties that are worth 2 million or more, people who own and live in those houses would pay 1% on the value of the property above 2 million. Right? So if you live in a £2 million house, you don't pay anything, and it's then 1% of the income. I have to say, I think this is absolutely fundamentally fair for several reasons. First of all, we have a society where we have massive and growing inequality. Income inequality is as bad as it was when the Tories left office. Wealth inequality is worse. We have a highly unequal distribution of wealth. And much of that is because of the property bubble that took place in the last decade. And as you say, people couldn't help being caught up in the property bubble, but they are, as a result of it, very much wealthier. And they have wealth which they can choose to live in, or they can treat it as an asset and trade and turn it into cash. We are very conscious, thanks to Ed and my neighbour Susan Kramer, there are areas of London where this is a sensitive issue, because there are some people, not many, there are some people who are very wealthy in asset terms, but don't have high incomes. And we are sensitive to that, and we've made suggestions about how people in that position can roll over tax in the same way that you can if you have liabilities to your local councils, for example, as a result of being in a care home. So the compassionate issue can be dealt with. There is another reason why it's unfair, and it relates to the current operation of the council tax system. Now, as you know, we as a party do not believe that the council tax system is fair because it is wholly unrelated to people's ability to pay. But one aspect of its unfairness is that although it's progressive in terms of property values up to band H, roughly, once you get to band H, there is no progression whatever. And I have a position in my constituency which is quite affluent, where people in a family home worth £500,000, band H, are paying exactly the same council tax as Mick Jagger or Sir David Attenborough or whatever, living on a very large mansion in Richmond Hill. And I think most people see that is fundamentally unfair. There is absolutely no progression whatever at the top end of the council tax scale. Now, of course, we want to change the fundamental system of local government finance. But within the present system, there is an unfairness that needs to be dealt with. So that's by way of context. But I can assure you, it isn't just in the north of England. I've tested this out in my constituency, which is said to be, I think, the 8th most affluent in Britain. And this proposal is massively popular, because people see the point of it. I mean, it isn't just raising a levy for the sake of it. It's raising a level in order to cut taxes on the vast majority of people who are on low and middle incomes.